And so what I try to really teach people is that, look, work to accumulate, but don't spend what you accumulate. What you need to do is take that accumulated asset and create income, and that income off of that accumulated asset, use that to play with. Use that that way it's a perpetual stream of cash, because once money's spent, it's gone.
They took like 20,000 people and they said, what is it that helps you feel the most healthy? Like, so they just basically were asking people psychologically, what is it that makes you feel healthy? And the highest percentage of people said, when my finances are solid, I feel healthy.
I asked this, like, if things I thought were true were actually wrong, when do I want to know? That's kind of crazy, because we walk around so often feeling like we have everything figured out because we feel okay, we feel good. The market did well, right? I feel good. But what if that paradigm is wrong?
Wow.
Good questions to ask yourself. It kind of keeps you in check.
Hey, welcome everybody to Unreasonable Health. This is the podcast that helps you look, feel, and perform your best at any age. And I bring you some of the world's leading experts in a variety of topics, from biohacking, labs. We bring regenerative medicine experts on, and we also bring people from the financial world. And today I've got one of my friends who is one of the leading experts in the financial industry. And his name is Brian Skrobonja. And Brian is somebody who has chartered he's a chartered financial consultant and a certified private wealth advisor with over 30 years of professional experience. He's passionate about educating his audience by writing books, producing a podcast, which I've been on. And so make sure you guys jump on that podcast. It's called the Common Sense Financial Podcast. He's also writes blogs, speaks on topics related to wealth creation, preservation, and utilization. He's the author of 3 books, Common Sense, Generational Planning, and Retirement Planning, and is the host of the podcast I mentioned, which also is the Forbes Top 10 podcast by financial advisors. So he's been awarded as a Future 50 company and the best in business by St. Louis Small Business Monthly, publication which named Brian among the best wealth managers in St. Louis, and is a regular contributor for Kiplinger magazine. So Brian, it's so good to have you on the show.
Hey, Regan, I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is, it's phenomenal, because you and I are in Strategic Coach together, and, it's a group of people who, think outside of the box. And if I look at what you're doing in the financial world, there's so many parallels to the world of health. But what would you say, some of the financial habits that you see your clients who are really successful, just like I see my clients who, they have healthy habits, but what are some financial habits that make people successful?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, like you said already, there's a lot of parallels with health. And so when it begins with money and success, I think it really starts with how you think about things and the mindset. Just to share a story, when I was growing up, my dad's from Croatia, hence my crazy last name. And he wound his way into St. Louis, met my mom. They got married, had kids, and here we are. So he was always very entrepreneurial, driven, and had tremendous work ethic. But one thing that always sticks with me and it's kind of the genesis of my personal financial journey, is that when I was a kid, he would say to me, like, hey, with your expensive tastes and habits, you better find yourself a good job. And, I didn't have any idea what that meant at that time, And so when I was introduced to this business, I didn't set out to be in the financial business, but that's where I was introduced to and was very intrigued by it. It started on the insurance side, then kind of flipped over to the investment side, and didn't like either one of those because it was more sales oriented. And so I discovered that financial planning was really what I was trying to do for people. And so as my business was being built, I excelled in the business. My income went up in the business. My lifestyle increased in the business. And so it was a little bit of early on kind of keeping up with the Jones type stuff happening there. And what I realized was, man, to sustain my lifestyle, I have to keep working really, really hard, and I have good work ethic. I'm never afraid to work. But I didn't want to, I just figured there's got to be a better way here, instead of just working hard, creating money and then spending it. Like, it's like just shoving coal into the furnace all the time. And so I realized it was like an epiphany that occurred that, you know what, I need to create a system for myself that creates reoccurring revenue, passive income, something that if I don't show up to work, it's still coming, right? It's still flowing in. And so I share that story just to say this, is that the mindset about what you're trying to do, it really starts with understanding that you're looking for passive income, right? That's the foundation for everything that we're trying to solve for. And then the habits just follow, everybody's goals along the way are going to be a little bit different. So the habits related to that really starts with the right mindset.
Man. Well, and I think that goes with health too. And yes, for those of you who, if you don't believe that Brian has an insane work ethic, I've worked with Brian for over a year, and he is a dude that is relentlessly focused on having high integrity and getting the job done. So I can vouch for you in there. But on this passive income side, it's kind of like with nutrition. Once you make up your mind and you choose, I don't need the dessert. I can get the protein I need. I'm going to eat organic food. Once you make the decision, then it's done. And it's same with exercise. The moment I decided, this was decades ago, that I'm going to exercise every day and not miss a day, it was like just in. And it was like, so that's like passive health in my mind, is when you put in the right habits. But what is passive income? What's some examples of it?
Well, passive income essentially is just the ability to have something, an asset per se, that is just creating cash flow. So you're it's kind of like the Warren Buffett saying, right? You got to be able to generate money in your sleep. Most people trade time for money. They work, they do something, and they get paid. They work and they do something, they get paid. So we all have a finite amount of time. There's only 24 hours in a day. So even if you're phenomenally good at what you do, you only can do so much in a day. And so you're capped. You have limitations on what you're capable of doing. You either have to keep duplicating yourself, which is of course something that we can do, or you have to figure out a way to create more of an evergreen system to where you don't have to show up to do it. And so that's really what passive income is about and that's from a business perspective. For somebody that's not in business, there are syndicated ways of doing that. And we won't get into necessarily that because it goes into the weeds, but you have passive ways of being able to have other people doing things for you to create passive income. So there's opportunity on both sides of the fence, entrepreneur or W-2, to create those ongoing streams of income.
Yeah, it's almost like, we've all been, at least just like the advice your dad gave you, is you're going to have to get a good job in order to keep up with the lifestyle that you want, because you like nice things. And we forget that money can work two ways. We can trade our time for money, which is what, I don't know what the stats, is it like 80% of Americans do that? Or do you know what the stat?
I don't have a stat for that, no.
But it's the disproportionately higher amount of Americans that do that than actually need to. But the way that the free market system works, it creates this beautiful opportunity where you can find other investment vehicles, so that by saving up a little money, by my dad always taught me never spend more than what you make. And even before I'd buy something, I wanted to buy this this four-wheeler when I was 13 years old, and it was $2,000. This Yamaha blaster is yellow. Like, I was so stoked. And I was like, I found the machine I want. And my dad's like, great. As soon as you have $4,000, you can buy it. And I was like, well, wait, it's $2,000. He's like, no, you need to have twice. That's a toy. And so he's like, you need to have twice the amount of money in your savings. And so I worked like crazy that summer. And I remember that fall going into the dealership and buying it. It was like the best purchase of my life. And actually, my dad still has that four-wheeler. It's
That's cool.
It's like 35 years old. What would you say like some healthy financial routines are for people to do on like a day-to-day or week-to-week basis, so that money doesn't feel so overwhelming and stressful?
Yeah, and I'm going to take what you had just talked about a second ago is about accumulating money and then spending it. What I try to part of my epiphany of creating passive income is trying to create the same mindset with my kids and my clients. And so what I try to really teach people is that, look, work to accumulate, but don't spend what you accumulate. What you need to do is take that accumulated asset and create income, and that income off of that accumulated asset, use that to play with, use that to, that way it's a perpetual stream of cash, because once money's spent, it's gone. So that's definitely part of that mindset. But I think routines, financial routines, I mean, I just parallel it like you already have done with health and exercise. We all have this vision of what we want our future self to look like, right? And so we just work backwards from that and create a journey for ourselves, setting milestones. And so, for a lot of people, retirement is that ultimate milestone, whatever time and point in time that is. But breaking that down into chunks, I mean, that's a big, audacious goal there in the future, right? And most people don't even know how to even quantify that. So if we can break it down into just good strategies, good daily habits, the right mindset, working towards that, that's really what we focus on. So, we start when we're talking with folks with Dan Sullivan's R Factor question. If we were sitting here 3 years from today, what has to have happened over that 3-year period for you to feel like it's been successful? And so those are little milestones along that journey towards that financial freedom of retirement, however you want to define that. So the biggest problem that people have is making that a reality, right? Because we're so, just like, and again, just like with the health industry, there's so many half truths. There's a lot of misinterpretation of data and concepts, and there's a lot of following of the herd. It's like the saying is, like, you look around to your closest friends and that's your future. So we have to step outside of that box. I didn't have a stat earlier about, how many people are passive income versus accumulation, but there's a reason why they say there is the top 1%. I don't know if that's the percentage we're looking for, but the wealthiest people, the most successful people, the healthiest people, right? They're doing things completely different than what the mainstream's doing. So for us to replicate what the mainstream's already doing, we're just following the herd and leading to the results that most everybody gets, which is not very favorable, right? Either being, having very limited amount of savings or being unhealthy. Those are where the status quo leads. So it is difficult to filter out this information, and quite honestly, it's hard to do by yourself without having some filter, some way of processing all of that, right? So when it comes to finances, people are thinking a lot of times, well, if I put money in an emergency account, if I have some sinking funds, and then if I have my money going into the retirement account, that I have things, on track. It's kind of like, again, just the parallels with health is like, if I feel okay, everything must be good. And that's the thing with finances too, is that, well, if I can pay my bills every month, I must be good. There's more to it, right? And unfortunately, people don't really realize that, and they find themselves in situations that they now realize was a mistake. But until you're at that point of reality, you don't know that you're making a mistake. And so having that flashlight shining ahead of you, having the right mindset, having the right tools, having the right strategies, knowing what it's right for you to be doing. I'd rather know that now than know that later. Right?
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, because there was a study that was published where they looked at all of the people. They took like 20,000 people, and they said, what is it that helps you feel the most healthy? Like, so they just basically were asking people psychologically, what is it that makes you feel healthy? And the highest percentage of people said, when my finances are solid, I feel healthy. So your financial health, and actually, when you look at the chronic diseases in people, the worse off they are financially, you typically see more and more chronic disease show up. So I think having you on is really critical, because I think you hit one of the best points that I've ever heard someone in the financial industry is you need to shine that light out into the future, because just feeling good, being able to pay your bills, man, I have an emergency account, but it's like, what do you want to do if you're going to live to be like 120? Like, you're going to need a whole different financial plan to get there. And everyone working with me is going to live far beyond 120. So you guys better get think about things financially. But if you look at, maybe when it comes to people budgeting for health, do you have any like insights on what would be smart as far as what people should be considering when maybe they're retiring, or maybe they're trying to look for, like a tax saving vehicle or some way to invest in their health for the future?
That's, that gets into a lot of detail with everybody's situation being a little bit different. I think that, like we've already said, setting the right mindset, like, what are you really trying to accomplish? So when people are like, most people that come to me, they're striving to accumulate money, and they often equate their success to what their account balance shows. So, hey, my investment statement shows $10 million. So I think I'm okay. Like, it's a question mark, right? I think I'm okay. I've got this money. Well, what the better measuring stick, as opposed to an account value, is how much income are you receiving? So if somebody is living on, I'll make up numbers, if somebody's living on $10,000 a month, what does $10 million mean to that? I mean, it's a lot of money, but what does it mean? Well, how does that compare to the 10,000 a month you need? So the right measuring stick is, what assets are you receiving income from that's replacing that 10,000? Because financial freedom is about cash flow. It's not about how much money you can have. $1 billion sitting in the bank, but if it's not providing cash flow, you're just spending your money. Like, you're chipping away at your resources. So I think that's one of the biggest things is with mindset, because most people, in my opinion, have it wrong. They're so focused on rates of return. They're focused on what the next best thing is, as opposed to really understanding that what you're doing is you're stacking income sources, right? For most people, and for a business owner, it's having multiple streams of income, right? To where you can work on one business and maybe have the other ones creating income for you as well. So you don't have to, again, trade time for money. So that to me is the biggest starting point, is realizing what the goal really truly is. And then it branches out from there. I mean, what type of investments people use, or what tax strategies come into play, or what legal work's required. All of that pertains to the unique individual, what their specific situation is. But yeah, there's some boxes to check there, with what investments to have, what tax strategy that you should have, what insurance coverages and estate planning, legal documents. It takes a team to pull that together, to shine that light ahead, to know what it is you really should be focused on.
Man,
here's a question. Here's a question. I ask this question myself all the time, and I don't know who coined this offhand, but I ask this, like, if things I thought were true were actually wrong, when do I want to know?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And so that's kind of crazy, because we walk around so often feeling like we have everything figured out, because we feel okay. We feel good.
Yeah.
Right. Our health's good. Checking account's good. Market did well. Right. I feel good. But what if that paradigm is wrong? So anyway,
wow.
Good questions to ask yourself. It kind of keeps you in check.
Yeah, if things are going wrong, when do you want to know? It's like, depends on what that thing is.
Right, exactly.
But really in the financial arena, that's so important, because so many people get crippled by it. I think the number one cause of bankruptcy in people over 60 is medical expenses. And it may be the number one cause of bankruptcy in the United States is medical expenses. And so, so what are some things that you do to help your clients manage financial stress, or what do you do personally when the markets are all over the place, or when people are, worried about their cryptocurrency or whatever it may be?
Well, I mean, I've matured in this area personally because I can't say that I have it 100% figured out because, emotions, you can't always control that, right? I'm pretty tough on myself, so I tend to fight myself a lot with that. So I'm not a psychiatrist by any stretch of the imagination, but I consider what Dan Sullivan talks about. I go back to his thinking a lot because it just makes a ton of sense. Is just trying to avoid living in the gap. When markets are good, people tend to feel good. When markets are bad, people lose all sense of what they know is true, which is the markets go up and down. So it's always the idea that this time it's different, right? This time it's different. We need to do something. I don't have a lot of that with my clients, but we do experience that with people that call us because when the markets go down, our phone rings more than when the market's up. So, but it is just with clients, it's just about, checking in with clients on a very routine basis to kind of take their temperature and see what's on their mind, what's stressing them, helping to understand what they're experiencing or dealing with, and then reminding them of, hey, remember, we're looking towards the future and you need to continue to have those conversations with your future self. What would your future self be saying to your current self? And then make adjustments. You never have it, it's just like health again, like you can't work out really well for a year, get really in shape, be optimal with all your markers and then stop.
Right.
It's an ongoing process. Your financial planning is not just getting a trust, throwing some money in a retirement account, and thinking you've got it done so you don't have to worry about it anymore. Financial planning is ongoing. It never ever stops. It's tweaks and measuring and tweaks and measuring that. And I think that, as long as we can look back over time, I always try to look back when I'm feeling stressed. I'll tend to look back about 2 years and try to remember what things were like 2 years ago and say, okay, has there been progress? Yeah. Now, if there hasn't been, that could be potentially a problem, right? But that's what keeps me in check is that, hey, I've made progress. It's just like the market thing, things are going to go ebb and flow up and down. Markets are going to go up and down. Emotions are going to go up and down. Circumstances are going to change. And just staying consistent with the activities that are going to lead you towards what that ultimate goal really is.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so easy to become reactive in the financial world and in any aspect of life. If things don't, if we don't have control, then we feel like, we get very vulnerable towards that. So do you have any kind of tool? I know you mentioned the gap. And for those of you who don't know what the gap is, it's this concept that Dan Sullivan has where once you arrive at the goal that you've set, then there's always another goal and there's always a better version of you, or there's always, once you have what you thought was financial success, you're just going to extend that goal out farther and farther into the horizon. And the gap is that distance between where you are now and where you want to be. And what Dan Sullivan says, and Brian, correct me if I'm misinterpreting it at all, but instead of being stuck on where you want to be and being stuck in what's considered the gap of where you are to where you want to go, look backwards and look at how far you've come. And that's what we call the moving future. So Brian and I do this exercise every 90 days where we look at all the things we've accomplished over the course of 90 days. And then what we're really excited about now, and then where we want to go in the next 90 days. And that's one of the ways you can stay out of the gap. But is there a tool that you help guide your clients with to help them stay out of the gap?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing that we use is our gap report. It's our proprietary method that we use. It's a tool that we use. It's a 21-point diagnostic tool that just looks at all the key markers, no different than a lot of the measurements that you would do for clients, just relating to finances. 21 markers that we think are critical for somebody's financial health and well-being. And then we educate clients on those 21 markers to help them see where there's gaps, where there's problems, where there is progress. So there's good that comes out of that. And then there's things that are surface that tells us what needs attention. And so that gap report is an ongoing process to constantly evaluate, no different than taking blood labs and the other things that you would do for clients routinely. Is we always want to see what's under the hood, things that we can't see, things that people aren't emotionally figuring out. So that data just shines a light right there on, hey, this is going really well. These things still need attention. Or, hey, things have changed for you. This is what we now need to be focused on. And so that is a tool that we use that we have found tremendous success from.
Wow. And so, the real benefits of people doing that gap analysis is then I'd imagine you're showing them where maybe some tax savings could be, where some investment opportunities are, where their liabilities are. Maybe there's, some health insurance vehicle or some life insurance vehicles that would be good for them. Am I on the right track as far as the gap analysis?
Yeah, it covers all those different markers. It has to do with cash flow, like how's your cash flowing? Where is your cash coming from? What does your diversification look like? To drill a little bit deeper on that, most people, I always say most because it's not relative to everybody, but most people think that diversification is having a lot of different ETFs or stocks or bonds or mutual funds in their portfolio. And if they have all the boxes checked with, small, medium, large, and international and fixed income, if they got all these boxes checked, that they're diversified. The problem is that there's more to diversification than just public stock market. So even if you're really deep in that vertical, you could have, quantity is not necessarily better, but if you have, 20 different holdings or 50 different holdings that are well diversified within the public market, you're still missing all the private markets, all the fixed assets, all the business opportunity. There's a horizontal diversification as well as vertical. And so we uncover all of that through our process to show them where the gaps are and how they're diversified. So it really shines a light on the risk exposure that they have. Because as we all know, when the market goes down, everything goes down. And we don't want that, right? We want to avoid that. So that non-correlating system and that process is what we're really trying to achieve, where when things are going right, then everything benefits. When things are going wrong, not everything is going down. And there's more to that. That could be a whole nother podcast, but that is the type of thing that it's showing. And then just cash availability, tax efficiency, all of that stuff plays into that as well.
Man, yeah, and that's talk about a great tool. And Brian, I mean, if you look at someone who's worked with you, what's it like? And can you maybe share us a success story from your practice?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of examples there. I think some of the biggest examples is people being able to make transitions. Everybody's journey looks a little bit different. And how they get there, it may be a little bit different when it comes to planning and strategies and what they should be doing. But ultimately, it's that transition over to having that financial freedom, or we can call it time freedom, because you're working to earn a paycheck, which we've already touched on. So you're trading your time for money. And so our goal is to get clients as quickly as possible to get to where their time is back to being their own, where they're not trading their time for money. They've done the planning to create those assets to that replaces the need for them to have their time, rented out. And so their cash flow is coming in from all the work that they've done. And so that's really the experience that we're trying to get clients to. And then once they have built that structure and moved into what we call our assets to income program, which is our another trademark program that we have that leads people into how to create passive income, then we move them into more of our legacy programs where we're, if you've got all your boxes checked with having enough cash flow, you're tax efficient, things are really good, all your markers are good, then we need to start thinking about what the legacy is. Like, what is your charitable intentions, what's your family intentions, what's your legacy intentions, and start building that out for clients, because that's when it really gets exciting, right? So building wealth, having passive income and having your time back, that's super exciting. And then having the ability to create a legacy, that is very meaningful. And so that's the progression that we try to take clients through over time. And how quickly people get there, of course, depends on their circumstances and how disciplined they are and how committed they are to the system. But those are the three legs.
Man, love it. And just kind of as we think about people are thinking about their future right now. What's somebody that you've helped transition? Like, is it more people transitioning into retirement? People like, maybe getting passive income? Have you helped somebody be able to pull out of their business so they're not slave to it anymore? Or what does it look like?
Yeah, it's people in transition typically, right? Because I think when people are working, you take an average person that's 30, 40 years old, again, just the average Joe working, like how most people are, they really have their head down. They're working hard. They are trading their time for money. They're trying to save as much as they can. A lot of times they're raising families. Their focus is to get toward that future goal, that future self that they see of being able to retire or what have you. So most people try to figure that stage out on their own. I don't think that's necessarily the best approach because there's some optimization that could happen. But really, when people start raising their head up to say, hey, I've got to make a decision here. Like when there's a decision to be made, I'm going to sell my business, right? Well, a lot of times people, when they get ready to sell a business, they start doing planning a few months before they're going to do that. Well, to do a successful transition, that really requires, sometimes years to set up the proper transition, putting the right people in place, having the right team in place. That takes time. It can't just be done. It shouldn't just be done overnight. Same thing with retirement. When people approach retirement, they lift their head up from their desk and they think, you know what, I've got to make some decisions. Like how they start asking questions like, how does this work? I've got all this money, but I think I'm okay. It goes back to that question mark. I think I'm okay, but maybe I need to get a second opinion on this. And so those are the times when people are reaching out to us saying, hey, I'm getting ready to sell my business. What do I need to do? Or, hey, I'm thinking about retiring. What do I need to do? If I could communicate to people years before they come to that epiphany, and get with them to help them properly map that and help them properly get things in order, they would have a better outcome. So wow. The landing of the plane takes time. It's not just a quick transaction, which so many people think about. They think about just that transition of retiring, like going to work on Friday and then having a perpetual vacation on Monday. That's as far as they've gotten in their mind. And I think it's the same thing with business is, you want to sell the business and everything and all the energy and stress going into that sale. That's, that check in hand is where their thinking stops.
Yeah.
And I have to help them think before that, of course, and then think longer after that. Like, okay, so because that's where the tax problems come into play when you're not thinking about what is after that. So there's a lot of tax strategy that's involved, but if you wait to the last minute, there's not always that opportunity to make the right tax decisions. It's more just getting the transaction done. So, but the success of it is really just being able to help people transition. So you're again working, running a business, you're selling a business, or you're retiring. It's positioning those assets to where you can have that time freedom. Because I had a business owner in the office this week selling a business, and exactly what we were just talking about. All this focus and attention is on selling the business. And I got him to open up today about, hey, let's get past the business. Okay, you've sold it. Think about that. You sold it. What are you going to do? Like, how are you going to spend your time? Because as you know, entrepreneurs are driven to do things.
Right.
They always want to make things better. They have to stay busy a lot of times. And I was just challenging them like, hey, where are you going to, you get a lot of tied up energy. What are you going to do with this? Right. And it kind of left them a little perplexed. Like, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. But we can meet his income objective through the sale, creating the right assets to create income. And then he can turn that switch on and off. So when he starts drawing the income, he can, go live his life however he wants. But if he gets into another business or, works for a buddy or whatever he decides to do, he can always turn that spigot off and then, continue to invest in his time to receive his money. So there's a lot of flexibility on how that looks, and everybody's situation is a little bit different. A typical scenario is people just want to do something more meaningful, right? They've been working, they've been putting a lot of effort into, capitalism and wanted to succeed. And I'm 100% for that. But you do reach a point where, like, okay, the measurement's always been money, or in my case, income, right? How much passive income we have. But what meaning are we bringing to the world? What meaning are we bringing to our family? What meanings are we bringing to our community, our churches, or whatever? So that is an area that we help people think through and transition into, and helping them really figure out, like, what is the meaning of what they're trying to do, and then help them with the planning to support that. So anyway, there's a lot to that. There's a lot of different stories that keep coming into my head here, but I don't want to chase rabbits. But I think it's just that idea of, hey, whatever it is that you want, whatever it is you're wanting to spend your time doing, you're going to need income.
Yeah.
And the solution, the fundamental solution, the core of it is having that passive income. And so that's always the success of, hey, taking an asset, whatever that may be, creating the income so you can go live your life. And then what surrounds all that, of course, is the tax planning and estate planning and everything that goes around that. So,
man, that's amazing. And so, Brian, I think you've been incredibly generous with your time today, and I really appreciate it. You start first with the gap report. How can people get a hold of that report and take it?
Well, the best thing to do is to visit one of my websites, brianskrobonja.com. If you can't spell that, it's Skrobonja, brianskrobonja.com. And on there's a lot of resources, and it'll lead you to a meeting with one of our team members here to help you understand what's involved with the gap report. But that's something that we can definitely offer, and walk through that with whoever would like to take advantage of that.
Right. And then is the best place to pick up one of your books, Common Sense, Generational Planning, or Retirement Planning? Is that like on Amazon, or is there a better place for people to purchase the book?
Yeah, the books are all on Amazon or wherever you would purchase a book. It's out there pretty much everywhere. Same with the podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere. So that stuff, just Google my name and you'll find me.
Awesome. Well, Brian, I really appreciate your time today. And for everybody who enjoyed this as much as I did, make sure you share it with somebody who you care about, who you love. I think the earlier that people can get their mind wrapped around their financial future, the better. And so share this with your kids. For those of you who are in a transition, there's no one better than Brian to help you walk through that and create a strategy and plan to help you find your financial freedom. Brian, thanks again for being on today. Really appreciate you.
Hey, Regan, thanks for having me on. I always enjoy talking with you. It's great.
You got it.